After my father died, my stepmother inherited a $500 million hotel empire. But the documents I found in my father's secret safe revealed that the hotels were actually being used for human trafficking. This woman hadn't just stolen my inheritance, she was also the FBI's most wanted criminal. My name is Alexander Hartwell. I'm 28 years old and a hospitality management specialist, graduated from Cornell Hotel School. But this story isn't about my education, it's about my family's dark secrets. Everything started with my father Charles Hartwell's sudden death. At 58, he was healthy and energetic when he died of a heart attack. My father was the founder and CEO of Hartwell International Hotels, operating 47 luxury hotels from New York to Los Angeles. The company was worth over $500 million. On the day of the funeral, my father's third wife, Isabella Rossetti Hartwell, hugged me through her tears. Isabella had married my father 3 years ago. She was Italian-born, 35 years old, with captivating beauty. She had previously worked as a concierge at our flagship hotel in Miami. "Alexander Bambino," she said in that familiar Italian accent, "now we'll get through these difficult days together. Your father loved you very much." I didn't know that day that the next morning in the lawyer's office, I would experience the biggest shock of my life. The next morning we gathered at Morrison & Associates, a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. James Morrison, my father's lawyer and close friend for 20 years, sat across from the heavy mahogany table with a serious expression. "I'll be reading Charles's will," Morrison said, adjusting his glasses. "Last revision dated 6 months ago." 6 months ago? My father had never mentioned anything about the will to me. He always said, "You'll inherit everything anyway." Morrison cleared his throat and began reading. "To my beloved wife Isabella Rossetti Hartwell, in return for the love and devotion she has shown me, I bequeath all shares of Hartwell International Hotels, ownership of the hotels, and all associated assets." The world spun around me. Everything to Isabella. Morrison continued. "To my son Alexander Hartwell, I leave the $2 million in the trust fund for completing his education at Cornell and my personal belongings." Isabella was quietly crying beside me, but there was a glint of triumph in her eyes. $2 million, that was my father's daily revenue. This can't be possible," I stammered. "My father always told me the company would be mine." Morrison looked at me with a sad expression. "Alexander, this will is valid and legal. Charles prepared this of his own free will 6 months ago." 6 months ago, right after he married Isabella," I muttered. Isabella put her hand on my shoulder. "Alexander, your father loved you very much, but maybe he thought you weren't ready for this responsibility yet." "Not ready yet?" I had graduated summa cum laude from Cornell. I had worked alongside my father for 2 years. I knew every hotel, but the legal process was complete. Isabella was now the sole owner of Hartwell International. In the following days, Isabella moved quickly. She changed the company's management team, fired old employees, brought in her own team. She made her closest friend Dmitry Volkov the assistant CEO. Dmitry was Russian-born, cold and calculating. "New era, new rules," Isabella told me in the company's Manhattan office. "You can stay in a junior position if you want." Junior position, in my own family's company. "Isabella, this company is my father's life's work. I'm his son, you're his son, but I'm the owner of the company," she said harshly. The Italian accent had disappeared, replaced by a cold tone. That evening when I returned to my apartment, questions swirled in my head. Had my father really changed his mind at the last minute? Or, I called Dr. Patricia Wells, an old family friend. She was both my father's doctor and close friend. "Dr. Wells, how was my father's health in his final months?" "Charles was very healthy, Alexander. He never had heart problems. In fact, at his last checkup he said, 'I've never felt better.'" "Well, was he acting strange lately?" A brief silence. "Actually, he seemed a bit tense for the last few months. Stressed. He kept saying, 'I have plans,' but wouldn't give details." Plans? What was my father planning? The next day, after making sure Isabella wasn't in the office, I went to my father's old office. Isabella hadn't changed it yet. Even breathing in my father's scent was painful. I started going through his desk. In the bottom drawer I found a business card. Detective Sarah Martinez, NYPD Organized Crime Unit. Why was my father keeping a detective's card who dealt with organized crime? On the back of the card was a handwritten note. "Hotel trafficking suspicion. Document everything. Trust no one. Hotel human trafficking. Suspicion." My heart rate accelerated. My father suspected something. But what? And from whom? That evening when I got home, I started searching Hartwell Hotel's human trafficking on my laptop. I didn't find any official news, but there were some forums on the deep web. There they talked about our hotels, especially Miami and Las Vegas locations. Strange things happening at Hartwell Miami, someone wrote. Fifth floor never open to guests. Strange sounds coming. Fifth floor. The fifth floor of our Miami hotel was indeed a restricted area. It was closed for renovation. But how long had it been closed? The next week I told Isabella I was going on vacation and went to Miami. Hartwell Miami Beach Hotel was a 24-story luxury building on Ocean Drive. It was one of the hotels my father was most proud of. When I arrived at the hotel, former general manager Frank Morrison greeted me. Frank had been my father's employee for 15 years. Alexander, what a surprise. Isabella didn't say you were coming. Isabella doesn't know, I said. Frank, I'm going to ask you a question. Why is the fifth floor constantly closed? Frank's face changed. He looked around anxiously. Alexander, we shouldn't discuss these topics. Why? What's on that floor? I just follow instructions. Mrs. Hartwell's instructions. Isabella's. But that floor was closed during my father's time too. Frank remained silent, but there was fear in his eyes. That night while lying in my hotel room, I started hearing strange sounds. Sounds coming from upstairs. Crying sounds. At 3 a.m. I went out to the corridor. I got in the elevator and pressed 5. The floor was indeed closed, but there was a small light at the end of the corridor. I approached quietly. I looked inside through a half-open door. What I saw froze my blood. In the corridor there were metal bunk beds. Young girls were lying on each one. Some were crying, some were sleeping. On the wall was a large map with various cities marked. This was a human trafficking center. I immediately took out my phone and started recording video. But then I heard a voice behind me. What are you doing here? When I turned around I saw Dmitry Volkov. 2 large men were with him. I got lost, I said. Getting lost is expensive around here, Dmitry said with a cold smile, especially for people who see certain things. The next morning I returned to New York early. Dmitry's threat was serious, but now I knew the truth. Our hotels were being used for human trafficking, and Isabella was at the head of it. But I needed evidence, solid evidence. I went to my father's house. Isabella hadn't moved there yet. She was still staying in her own apartment. I had a key. I searched my father's office thoroughly. I couldn't find anything. Then I remembered, when I was a child, my father had shown me a secret compartment. Behind the bookshelf, I pulled Dickens's Great Expectations book. The bookshelf slid open to the side. Behind it was a small safe. The password, my father's favorite word, legacy. The safe opened. Inside were dozens of documents, photos, and a USB drive. I looked at the documents. Isabella's real background. She was wanted in Italy for human trafficking crimes. Her real name was Isabella Martinelli. She was operating an international crime syndicate with Dmitry. I plugged the USB into my laptop. Inside were my father's secret recordings, conversations with Isabella, plans with Dmitry. Everything was there. The last recording was from 2 days before my father's death. Isabella realized I found out her true identity. I had to change the will, or she would kill me. But I left a way for Alexander. The safe password is legacy. Son, if you're listening to this, go to the police. I heard Dmitry planning to kill me. My father knew everything, and he changed the will to protect me. I immediately called Detective Sarah Martinez. Detective Martinez, this is Alexander Hartwell. I'm Charles Hartwell's son. Alexander, I was waiting for your father. But I know he died, but I have evidence to give you. 2 hours later, I was at NYPD headquarters. Detective Martinez and FBI agent Susan Cooper sat across from me. These documents are very serious, Agent Cooper said. We've been looking for Isabella Martinelli for 5 years. She's on Europol's most wanted list. Dmitry Volkov too, Martinez added, a fugitive from the Russian mafia. What happens now? I asked. We're setting up an operation, Cooper said. Tonight we'll raid the Miami hotel, but first we need to catch Isabella too. The FBI's plan was this. I would go to Isabella and say I want to be a partner in the company. She would take me to Miami. There they would catch both Isabella and Dmitry red-handed. The next morning I went to Isabella's office. I was wearing the microphone the FBI gave me. Isabella, I want to talk to you. Of course, Bambino. What is it? This company is my family's company too. Maybe, but first I want to learn everything. Especially the business in Miami. Isabella froze. The business in Miami. Frank told me. The special guests on the 5th floor. A long silence. Then Isabella started laughing. Alexander, you really are your father's son. He also wanted to know everything. What do you mean? Your father was very curious. He asked too many questions. That's why his heart stopped. What? Isabella took out a photo from her desk. My father in a hospital bed. Intubated. It wasn't a heart attack, Alexander. Potassium chloride injection. Very effective. Leaves no trace. My blood froze. You killed my father. Not me. Dmitri did it. But the idea was mine. At that moment the door opened and Dmitri entered. Alexander, welcome to the family, Dmitri said. Now you know too much, just like your father. Just then the glass windows shattered and FBI agents burst in. FBI, hands up. Isabella and Dmitri were shocked. They raised their hands. Isabella Martinelli, Dmitri Volkov, you're under arrest, Agent Cooper said. Isabella looked at me, her eyes filled with hatred. You sold us out. No, I said. I just completed my father's plan. As FBI agents handcuffed them, Agent Cooper turned to me. We also conducted a simultaneous raid in Miami. We rescued 23 people, all minors, kidnapped from different countries. In the following weeks, everything developed very quickly. It was revealed that Isabella had committed marriage fraud, marrying with a fake identity. The will was invalidated because there was undue influence and fraud. My father's real will was kept with another lawyer. He had left everything to me, just as he said. Isabella was charged with murder 1, human trafficking, and fraud. Dmitri was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Both received life sentences. 6 months later, Hartwell International Hotels was completely cleaned up. The old management team was brought back. Frank Morrison remained as general manager in Miami. Alexander, Frank said, your father would be proud of you. My first task was to start a human trafficking awareness program in the hotels. We trained employees and increased security protocols. I also established the Charles Hartwell Foundation, rehabilitation programs for human trafficking victims. A year later, I was sitting in my father's old office. Now my father's photo hung on the wall. Below it read, "Truth always prevails." My phone rang. A message from Detective Martinez. Isabella committed suicide in jail. Dmitri was murdered in general population. Justice served. Someone knocked on my door. My secretary Sarah entered. Mr. Hartwell, there's an interview request from Forbes magazine. Topic: How I exposed my stepmother's crime empire. I smiled. I accept, because this story wasn't just my story. This was the story of how truth always comes out, how injustice cannot win. My father was right. Legacy, inheritance isn't just money. Legacy is doing what's right, and I would protect my father's legacy to the end. 2 years later, Hartwell International was recognized as the world's safest hotel chain. Our anti-trafficking program had become an industry standard. Isabella and Dmitri's story became the subject of a Hollywood film, Blood Money, The Hartwell Conspiracy. I was still working as CEO, but now I wasn't just doing business, I was protecting people, because I had learned that sometimes the biggest criminals hide behind the most beautiful faces, and true inheritance isn't money, it's justice.